Alright, once again, another deck profile on set number 13 of Divines. And this time it's going to be a completely new deck, being my first Phantom deck. That is also the first Phantom deck that actually showed up in the anime, being Blangdmire Phantom. A deck that I was originally not going to build, but end up kind of doing it just because I really love its aesthetic. And it was very cheap if you're building this the budget-friendly way, which is what I did. Because I decided to play this deck in a more budget-friendly manner, as most of the cards for Blangdmire Phantom was unexpectedly cheap, that I just kind of end up building the deck. And I also wanted to complete a set of Phantom decks, one for each nation, that I was planning to build, which majority of them are going to be in set 14. So I decided to pick Blangdmire Phantom as my Keter deck, as right now at the moment it's the only Keter Phantom deck actually, until they introduced more in the manga or some random mysterious character actually showed up in the anime, as we still got technically 3 episodes. That is also the movie. And overall, I had a little more fun with this deck than I thought. It takes the twist of original Blandgmire, but in a way also combines it with a bit of Rezael, as Blandgmire originally focuses on binding your cards face down from your soul, but now instead of using your soul, it uses the drop zone to bind, kind of similar to Rezael, and also Superior Calls from the bind zone, kind of like what Rezael would do from Superior Call with the drop zone. That's basically the main playstyle of the deck. You do the bind still, but this time with the drop, and you do the recovery play, kind of like what you would do with Rezael, although more so in a mix with Blandgmire Nexus, as Blandgmire Nexus is also a more light themed Blandgmire with still the dark theme aesthetic, but this time brings salvation from the unit from the bind zone, kind of like what Blandgmire Nexus would normally do. But overall, it is a pretty fun playstyle, but unfortunately, I still think it does lack support, so we still need to wait till set 14 for its actual proper rearguard support. As much as this is still the introduction phase, it is still short on certain cards, and I am also not running certain cards at the moment just because I don't have any more copies of them, or just lack of, so I am running more budget-friendly and alternate cards. But anyway, with all that out of the way, let's just begin with the deck profile, with of course, the ride deck. So here's the starter, the new Cavity Malaysia, which being Phantom and race does matter, in which we go to Hollow Raptor. So when your grade 2 rides on top of it, the Fake It Fang, you can search your deck for 1 Crimson Moon card and put it to Soul. This will actually relate to Fake It Fang, or even some of your discard fodders in a way. In which we go to Fake It Fang. When your grade 3 Blandgmire rides on top of it, you can Soul Blast 1, which could be the Crimson Moon card, and then reveal the top 3 cards of your deck to put 1 to hand, the rest goes to the drop. This is so you could set up your drop zone for your binds. In which now we go to Blangdmire Phantom. So Blangdmire Phantom has 2 skills, the first one of course being the main one, where once per turn you can canvas 1, bind 4 cards from the drop zone, and then until the end turn it gets these skills. So first off, all your front row units gets plus 5k power regardless of how many cards in the bind zone, but you have at least 10 cards in the bind zone plus another 5k, and you have at least 13 plus another 5k. So it gets stronger over time as an angel brings salvation. In a way, it does remind me a bit of Messiah. And additionally, auto when this card attacks, choose a card from the bind zone and call it to rearguard. So basically, it gives power to your whole front row and also 1 additional attack, which is pretty nice. And this is going to be a 4 attack deck because of it. So right now, there's no 5 attacks because there's no support that really revolves around it, unless if you run 1 extra card that I said it's going to be budget friendly. But the second skill is the Phantom skill, where you once per turn, Angel Blast 3, bind 2 Crimson Moon cards, and then perform all the following based on the number of cards bound, and that includes the Crimson Moon cards as well. So on the first turn, where you're going to bind 4 and then plus 2 Crimson Moon, that will be 6. And then by the time you hit next turn, it will be technically 10. With 2 more Crimson Moon, that will be 12. So you just need to figure out how to make 13. Or you could just wait 1 turn after. But anyway, so you have at least 2 Crimson Moon cards. Choose a card from the drop zone and call it to rearguard. And you have at least 4 Crimson Moon cards. This card gets a crit plus 1. And during Persona Ride turn, you also heal 1 damage. So salvation to yourself with extra heal and try to overkill your opponent. So the Phantom skill is kind of an extra bonus more so than anything. But overall, it's basically a 4th attacker that just gives power to your whole front row with an additional Phantom skill that just gives you bonuses. So nothing super crazy here or anything, but overall pretty fun. And then of course, to the main deck, 3 more for Persona Ride, and as you saw from the Phantom skill, you do want a Persona Ride so you can heal, and also you want to play the Phantom skills and finish it up as soon as possible. And then next up, 4 moons, and I am running Budget Moon, and I pulled 1 copy of the FR, so that's why I'm using it here. But all Crimson Moons have the ability when in the damage zone, you can put it back to the drops, so you can put the top card of your deck as damage, and also has the ability where when you play it, you look at top cards of your deck to choose up to 1 card from among them with great less than or equal to Vanguard and call it to rearguard. But the not Budget Moon lets you also draw a card if you do not call from any of them. So the non-Budget Moon is actually better, but if you're on a budget, go ahead and run this, as basically it functions the same thing, and you can only have 4 of copies of a moon in a deck. And because I'm playing this more as a budget moon, and I am not paying $20 to $30 for each copy for all the Phantom decks I'm going to be doing, I'm choosing budget moons. And besides, functions the same way like I said. But most important card of the deck must run 4. And then to continue up, we go to Phantom Zamoog. So Zamoog, when placed on rearguard while your opponent's Vanguard at least grade 2, choose at least a grade 3 Vanguard Blandgmire from your right deck, and then of course reveal it, and either that or your Vanguard's a grade 3 Blandgmire, you can counterblast 1 to look at top 2 cards of your deck to choose up to 1 of them to put to your hand. The other one will go to soul or bottom of the deck. So it's just another choice plus 1, but not the most necessary thing. And also, counterblast could get heavy or not heavy depending on how you play it. But the second skill is the main part. So when this card attacks, if you have at least a grade 3 Vanguard Blandgmire plus 5k, but your opponent's Vanguard is at least grade 3, and it was placed during the Vanguard's ability, plus 10k instead, and then additionally you can enter plus 3 for a crit plus 1. So similar to original Zamoog, it acts as a beater to your opponent, and also pressure machine. So that's why you just run this as a main superior caller, and you just want to see this as soon as you can, so you could discard it and bind it and then just call it. And then 4 Crimson Moon Searchers as discard fodder, because every Phantom deck needs something to search for the Crimson Moon, and obviously running 4 of these is very helpful, even though you already have Crimson Moon Searching in your ride deck, but sometimes you do need the extra Crimson Moon Searching, so you do kind of still want to see these. And also additionally, they have the ability where when placed from hand to Guardian, you can counterblast 1 or energy blast 3 to draw. Watch out for the energy, since the deck does use a bit of energy depending on how many of these you use, as Blandgmire Phantom does use 3 energy per turn on the Phantom skill. So do watch that out, and then there's also Zamoog that uses energy. But counterblast, sometimes yes and sometimes no. And then, since I only have 1 copy of T-Fold, the 1 T-Fold, and also you're using orders. So my alternative T-Fold, if you need to be on a budget, is Calibri, because Calibri, when placed on rearguard, regardless of what method you use, you can counterblast 1 and soul blast 1 to look at top 3 cards of your deck to choose up to 1 card from among them. If it's a grade 2 or less unit card, you call it. Anything else, you put it to your hand. And technically, you can call this through Blandgmire Phantom skill to superior call this in battle and then do another superior call, which is better off when your opponent's at 5 damage, and if you still have soul, since this deck can sometimes suffer from soul issues. But basically, this is your alternate usage for T-Fold, because if you can't afford T-Fold, this is the better option, as any other superior callers need to usually be superior call from hand. The Dual Nation one needs to be from hand, unfortunately, so that's why I prefer Calibri, because it could be called in any means, and also it could be a 5th attacker usage, which is another reason why I kind of prefer Calibri, even though I don't use it completely too often for the 5th attack. But if you do have the T-Folds, go ahead and run full T-Folds. And so that's it for the grade 2 lineup. Now to the grade 1 lineup. So first off, the Knight of Charity. So when placed on rearguard other than during battle, you can look at top 5 cards of deck to search from one of them for 1 Crimson Moon, or 1 Blandgmire from one of them and add it to your hand, which is of course very nice for more consistency search. But also, at the end of battle, this unit boosts if you did not countercharge during the turn, and your bind zone has a Crimson Moon card, which is good to happen. You can retire this unit for countercharge 1. But also, at the bind zone, if you superior call through your Vanguard's ability, you can bind another copy that is not itself from the drop zone while this card is in the bind zone, and then superior call it, so it's an exchange of bind. But also a superior call for a booster, which is also very nice. And even if you do call on top upon something, you put it to the drop zone, which you can buy next turn, which is why this card is just so good for the extra, basically, restand booster, basically. Or in some cases, it's just a +1 booster. So that's why this is an auto 4 of, and it's a consistency boost, so why not? And then one card I don't really see people running, and I even might take it out myself, but I still found some use, is Advol, because when placed from hand to rearguard, if your Vanguard is at least a grade 3 Blandgmire, or the ride deck one is, you can look at top card deck to choose up to 1 card from among them to put it drop. This will set up your drop zone. That's why I still kind of like to run this card. With the second skill where once per turn, back row, when your other unit in the same column is placed on rearguard during battle, through your Vanguard's ability, you can soul blast 1 to stand this unit. So it's another restanding booster, but considering that you got the other one to superior call during mid battle, technically this is not necessary. And the other one is technically more free than this one, which is another reason. And sometimes you don't have the soul, so I might end up taking this out, but I do still kind of like the search for the top 5 to discard 1, because it is kind of useful. Now, one card that I definitely would say you should probably run is definitely the Saragon, because Saragon is one of the best cards that Keter ever made, and being able to choice draw from the top 2 is always very good, and the fact that you also play orders in this deck just auto makes it function properly, even though you don't have more rearguards than your opponent sometimes. So this card I do kind of recommend. If you can't afford this, you can always run Painkiller as well, just so you can fill up your drop zone. Kind of functions the same way, but that one does cost soul. But I do still recommend Saragon, as Saragon is the better option out of any of the basically draw from the top to retire itself. And then finally 4 PGs, because PGs, and pick whatever you want. And then trigger lineup, OT, pick whatever you want. 8 crits because you want to kill your opponent as soon as you can. 3 draws because you actually do need draw power in this deck despite all the superior calling that you kind of got, but it's mostly because of main phase calling, and you do still want to get some of your Crimson Moon stuff. And 4 heals, only 1 counter heal because I ran out of copies of crit counter. And so that's it for this deck profile on my Blandgmire Phantom deck. What do you guys think of it? What other cards would you recommend? And what other changes would you make? Besides making those expensive options because I don't have any more copies of them. And T-Fold is getting reprinted soon, so I'm just waiting for that rather than basically just buy the T-Folds now. And besides, a lot of the Phantom decks are pretty budget friendly in a way if you decide to play with alternate options like what I did with the Budget Moon. But overall, it is a pretty fun deck. Basically plays with elements of original Blandgmire mixed in with a bit of Rezael, or even just original Blandgmire combined with Nexus, just this time face up, and you're using the drop zone instead. And it's just overall pretty cool, awesome idea, and I just really love its aesthetic design that I kind of just end up building the deck. And still the only Keter Phantom deck, and I decided to pick this one just because I do love Blandgmire, so I just end up building the deck. But like I said, it's just a fun deck that just does 4 attacks, does superior calls, and just still waiting for the support of set 14 as it is going to help out with the deck. And technically Mythic of 0 as well, since that is counted as a Keter unit as well, which is another nice option. But in that, I hope that my alternate options kind of help out rather than running the same card like T-Fold every single time. And hopefully it does bring some extra ideas. I am also thinking about running the grade 3 that was in the same set to do that 1 extra bind, because that card does help with the 13 bind as soon as possible. So I am thinking about running that in, but sometimes it's not very useful, as sometimes you prefer the superior calls the Moog over that, so I'm not entirely too sure at the same time. But overall, cool deck, and there's really not much to say, and see you all next time.